Hey there guys, and welcome back. So we have had a long week of development, and I figured I'd talk about it. Yesterday, instead of streaming, I decided to take a work day and get some stuff done that I've wanted to get done for a while now and couldn't. And therefore, we are catching up today on the stuff that has been completed this week. So, first things off, let's talk about the big thing that released right over here. Oh dear goodness, not that. I literally just fixed that a minute ago, and it is... wow, that is annoying. Huh. It's funny because it says it's in the right... oh, I changed the wrong... okay. So, I see what happened here. That was a little bit of a derp. My bad. So I changed the wrong source. So it is now fixed. Yeah. On Monday, yeah, I think it was Monday. I finished up the ChatGPT downloader. I started that on Saturday officially. I did some research during the week during my break at work, Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday I decided, or on Saturday I started putting it together. I decided to forego doing Light Lake last weekend in favor of this because I frankly was not very motivated with Light Lake once I sat down to do it that morning. Saturday morning, sat down, went, I'm not feeling super motivated on Light Lake, and therefore ended up over here on this project. Banged it out in about 2 days. 2 days plus a little bit of spit and polish on Monday, and releasing Monday evening along with the short announcing the release. And then by Wednesday we had the video up for the whole entire demo. So over on my YouTube page you can go ahead and check out the video to see what exactly is going on here, and you can download it from here. Basically what it does is it gives you these buttons to both download and save to your browser conversations, and the downloads are JSON files. They're in a particular format because it's kind of difficult to ascertain how exactly you need to display the content provided by ChatGPT. ChatGPT actually formats its content in special and unique ways, so therefore I don't exactly want to just spit out a whole list of strings. We do have an stripped strings feature in there where it does give you just the dialogue straight up without anything else. However, the main content of the JSON file is HTML pulled directly from the page, and then that goes, then I should say rather, on the options page, you can load that back up if you save it to your browser, and you can view it offline and print it. You can't actually print ChatGPT from their website because it's not set up to actually print conversations. It only does, all it really does is provide a screenshot of what is on your screen at the moment, and then prints that out. So by using this extension you can actually print out a whole entire conversation or print it to PDF, save to PDF, so you can get a PDF version of it. So very happy with how that turned out, and very happy that I was able to get, it effectively done in 2 days. And then again, Monday was just spit and polish to make things look nice. For example, designing the logo, which is right here. And you'll see it at a couple other places. Do I have it saved? I don't think I have it saved in... oh no, I should have it saved in here, yeah. And that is obviously just a rip-off of their logo. So what I did was I took the SVG, wow, I always do that, SVG from their website, flipped it, and then changed the background color. So 100% up front, that's not anything I created from scratch. That is obviously meant to be a parody, that's what I'm going to claim, of ChatGPT's logo. So again, you can get it from the GitHub, easy enough. And the video is up on my YouTube channel, so you can go ahead and watch that after you're done here. Next up, it took a week and a half, but let me go ahead and turn the camera on now, which was the reason why we were running a little late today, in just about 5 minutes. But my replacement for the Pindle, or Pinder, whatever the heck it is, Pindr, I think it is. I don't think it's L, whatever, L's and R's. finally came in. This is a proximity sensor, is what it is, and it's used to measure bed height on the Prusa. And I had talked about just buying one off of Amazon because, look, it's cheaper, and it was cheaper by a little bit. It wasn't cheaper by a huge amount, but it's cheaper, and I'd get it in 1 to 2 days, right? And I whined and complained about it when I talked about that on stream, because fact of the matter is that I really prefer to support the smaller businesses, smaller relative to Amazon, right? So for that reason, I really wanted to get it from Prusa, and I decided finally, you know what? They say 1 to 3 days to assemble an order, and then the shipping was actually 2 to 3 days. So I was like, all right, you know what? Should be here 3 to 4 days. You know, it takes them 5 seconds to grab this off a shelf, and then let me fix the auto adjust. I replugged my webcam in for the first time in a while, and it is obviously had everything reset. Let's see. Focus off. There we go. Apply. So it had all the settings reset on it. Regardless, point being is that I figured, okay, instead of 1 to 2 days, 3 to 4 days, I'll live with it. I'm paying a little bit extra, but I'm supporting the company. The reason why I bought a Prusa in the first place was not just because it's a very reliable printer, which it is. It's a remarkably reliable printer, but also because, you know, they have done a lot for the 3D printing community. So for that reason, I said, you know what, we'll take the extra 3-4 days. Well, ended up being more like 10 days, so that kind of sucked. But this finally came in, which meant that I can finally start printing again. And that meant I could move on with my other projects that had been on hold. So Friday night, I went about. This came in Thursday night. I think this came in Thursday night. Friday night, I actually put it in to the machine. Spent all night Friday night, running back through all the wizards, the incomplete calibration wizard. And that's due in part also to the fact that my X belt has gotten quite loose. It's stretched out a bit over time, so I recalibrated everything else with the new printer, and got it set back up. I initially had the 4mm nozzle on it, and then I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? I may as well swap it out for the 6mm nozzle. Everybody's, been talking about, you don't need 4mm anymore, 6 is a new 4. And the fact of the matter is that I don't really do that much detail work on my printer. So for that reason, it makes more sense to get the 50% faster print times from having a 50% faster nozzle. And that's what I did. I swapped it out for a 6mm nozzle, updated my machine preferences in Prusa Slicer to include the 6mm nozzle because it was not included originally. And I got to printing. And I did a few calibrations on Friday evening. Actually, no, Friday evening. This actually would have been Saturday. No, I guess it was Friday evening. Sorry, the days are kind of blurring together, I guess, at this point. No, it was definitely Friday evening. So I did some calibrations Friday evening, trying to get my printer up to, or since I had, wow, scatterbrain this morning, too early. Since I had put the 6mm nozzle in, I figured, you know what, let's try to push this. It's one of those things you hear about Vorons and Bamboo Lab, right? And Carbon X1, and it's like 10,000 millimeters per second acceleration. And I look at my Prusa and it's at 1,000, and I'm sitting there like, I feel like we could maybe squeeze a little bit more out of this. Printing speed was baseline 45 millimeters per second. I was like, you know what, let's try. So I ran a bunch of calibrations, and a bunch of calibration prints to test out different speeds. And as it turns out, and it's one of those things, I'm not doing much on the desk. So I was keeping us on the desk because I'm about to show you something. I probably am going to get through this conversation quickly enough that I'll keep us on the desk right here. So watch me play with my hands. Regardless, here, I'll grab a dangerous implement. Keep your attention. So I kept on upping the speeds, and it seemed like the speed topped out around about So 85 was the last time I actually saw real changes in it, and this was after going through all the extra menus that you have to go into. So it's evidently not just the speed menu. You also have to go into the filament menu because the filament overrides the speed, and you have to go into the machine settings because those put hard limits on the speed. So for that reason, I had to track all that down. It took a bit of Googling to figure out why my speed wasn't going up. And I ended up settling around 105. I made a separate profile for that, and I had to set a separate profile for all three, for the nozzle size at the layer height, for the filament, and for the printer itself. I had to make a duplicate printer in order to have higher offsets for it. Now, in theory, those higher offsets could just stay there because, again, those are only hard caps. So the speed menu and the filament menu will both cap that down anyway. But point being is I went through all that work, and the calibration tests that I was running off of Teaching Tech's website, they were all looking perfectly fine. Again, for whatever reason, around about 105, I couldn't get the thing to print any faster. Between 85 and 105, I couldn't get the printer to actually print any faster. I couldn't get the speed down. So I was like, all right, whatever. Let's get something. First off, I'm going to print the stuff I need to print, right? So I got some of the stuff printed that I needed to print to get all my work done. And then I went ahead and this is what this is finally for, started printing the torture toaster. And as you can see, it is not done. It is not done because I got home from work. I went into work to get work done. Again, yesterday was a work day, so Saturday went into work multiple times and got work done at work where I had more space to do bigger and greater things. And came home, and I needed to set these lights back up. These lights up here that you can't see because my camera is there. That light and that light. Anyway, point being is that I came home, started setting those lights back up. I had taken them to work in case I needed extra lighting. As it turned out, I don't really think I do. I think it's probably fine with the amount of lighting that I have at work right now. But set them back up, and I accidentally dropped the heavy end, the barrel connector, rather, that connects these two lights to a single output, or a single input, I should say. I dropped it, and it just so happens to hit the stupid USB cord. Whoops. All right, nothing knocked over. It's fine. Hit the stupid USB cord that connects my computer Octoprint to the printer, which killed it. So my printer got disconnected from Octoprint, and it killed it, which is unfortunate. Now, this was run on the 105 setting, right? And these work. The gears work as soon as I get my chubby fingers. I swear they work. They were working last night. All right, there we go. So the gears were working. Again, I evidently cannot move my fingers today, but gears were working. The overhangs were a little crappy. So previously on my slower prints on the 0.4 nozzle, right, which capped out at 0.3 layer height, and I did this at 0.4 layer height. I did this at 0.4 layer height at the high speeds. This is 60-ish right here, and 60 was normally fine for me. As you can see, 60 is no longer fine. Or it's a little ugly, I should say. But all these circles and the hexagon look like absolute trash. The toast technically came out after I came down here and gave it a little bump, okay? And then the pins were just an absolute nightmare. The pins were all stuck. And the number 5 pin, the 0.5 millimeter pin, which is clearance, once I gave it a little prod to get it unglued from down here, then it just flew out completely. So one of those things. We did not finish the print, which kind of sucked, but I kind of have everything I need to know about it, right? Which is, frankly, the detail work on the 0.6 millimeter nozzle at 0.4 millimeters at 105 millimeters per second max speed is not super great for detailed work, which was kind of expected. The next thing I should mention about that is that on this print, and this print was the one that I saw the most change on, but the difference between the stock 0.4 millimeter layer height on that nozzle and my super fast settings was only 30 minutes, which on a 7-hour print, well, this was down to 6.5 hours, but 6.5 hours to 7, the difference there is kind of negligible, right? It is print it and then go to sleep or go to work or something like that. Like, you don't really have many other options. So for that reason, I don't think I'll actually be using those super fast print profiles, because again, aside from this print, which was actually half an hour, most of the other prints that I checked on, that I tested on, only saved about 5 minutes, which again is like basically negligible. So that is that. That is the update on my printer. I'm gonna hold on to this guy for the time being because I'm a little confused. It seems to work sometimes and then obviously does not work other times. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and plug it into an Arduino at some point and play around with it and see what happens. So I'll hold on to it, stick it in my Arduino random pile of components box, and then maybe pull it out and give it a look later on. So next up, we can talk about, get us off the desktop for just a minute, since you've been staring at my hands for a while now. And we'll talk about Lightlike, because I did some coding in Lightlike yesterday between lunch and dinner. And good, it's still up. I realized something. So this right here is our map, and I color coded it so you can see the distances, how the distances spread out. And I was setting up the dungeon slash, well, I'm sorry, the planet slash station builder. Again, dungeons being planets, our versions of planets. I was setting that up, and that works off of a tier system, right? I had talked about the further you go out, the more difficult things get. And I was looking at the code, and I was like, was I stupid or what? Because I was like, wait a second. Basically, how it would work would be everything from here to here is tier 0 or something like that. And then everything, with the exception of the very corners, would be tier 1. And that's how I had written the code. And I was like, what the heck was I on? So anyway, I updated the code. And I just, one of those things, since I had screwed up the code the first time, I wanted to have a visualization confirmation that everything looked correct. And here's the updated map, which looks good to me. So we have these super difficult areas at the corner. You may never need to go. Again, we're building this as more of a roguelite adventure game. So for that reason, it's randomly generated. The map is randomly generated. You may never need to go to one of these corners to get these tier 7 adventure encounters. But for everything else in the middle, as you can see, it rings out pretty nicely. So I was pretty happy with that. I also did a little bit of this. So this is the dungeon floors, the planet floors, I should say. So you can see on a tier 1 planet, you get this nice range between 1 and 3 tier difficulty encounters. And you can see how that kind of works its way up, and it gets difficult towards the end of a tier and then drops back down, you know? Makes sense, right? So that was Lightlike yesterday. I got most of that set up for planets. There's one more thing I'm adding to that, which is actually a tag list, because planets really should be themed, right? And that means that you need to be able to pull monsters, encounters that match the theme for planets. It's not so much a big deal on stations. Stations are kind of not diverse and diverse enough that you can have all sorts of different encounters on a station, but since they're all within the context of a station, then, you know, it kind of makes sense, right? There's nothing too weird about that. In theory, if this was handcrafted, then you could have unique little quirks running throughout stations, you know, where a station, all the encounters in the station tie together towards some unique quirkiness to the station. But being as this is a randomly generated game, they're stations, so they don't necessarily need tags because they're all just the station tags, so to say. So That is Light Lake. Again, worked on that between lunch and dinner yesterday, just a couple hours. And I'm trying to figure out what to talk about next because we have a couple different options here. And I think we'll come back to the desk and we'll talk about... Actually, you know what? We will come back to the workshop and I'll just talk a little bit because yesterday morning, Saturday morning, I went in to film the video. Now that one of the videos, the first of the videos that I've been wanting to film for a while now, but couldn't because my printer was down. And technically speaking, I really should have gotten it filmed a little bit earlier. It's just that I kept on running into roadblocks that were setting me back. So, in theory, last weekend would have been the weekend I had free, my first weekend that I had free, that I definitely would have done it. But again, the printer was down, so cry about it, not much you can do. Regardless, I went in to film and got in, I want to say around 8:30, and I figured, all right, actually, you know what? Let's see, when did I wake up yesterday? No, yeah, I woke up at 7:30 yesterday, so yeah, I got in around 8:30. I got into work around 8:30. So I figured, 8:30, stay till 12. Should be plenty of time to not only film, but also get a little bit of extra work done. So, yeah, a couple little hiccups there. Frankly, it was a fine morning. It really wasn't that bad. It's just one of these things where I severely underestimated how long it would take me to put everything back together now that I finally had all the parts I needed. So basically, I got the filming. It took me a little bit to get set up for filming. And then once I had the filming done, then I needed to put stuff together. The stuff that I brought with me had to put together to finish filming the second half of the video. And at that point, it took way longer than I expected. Which is, again, a minor inconvenience, not really that big of a deal. At least it got done. But that meant that I did not have as much time to get done the other stuff that I wanted to get done before lunch. So, one of those things was... I'm trying to think. I don't think I actually did. So, there's two projects that I need to get done. One is building a new base for my Sawzall table, or not Sawzall table, what do you call that? Jigsaw table. I need to build a new base for my Jigsaw table because it was super rickety and I just slapped it together. You can watch the video. I say in the video, this is a super rickety crap table. I need to redo the legs here. So, first thing was to get that done. But before I did that, I wanted to do some test piece for my bench that I'm putting together in my room to put my printer and the Carvera on when it gets in, and my Ender 3 in theory will go below it because evidently I do not have room. Again, I did a long talk about that one a few weeks ago, I think. So I wanted to do some test cuts because, and now we can swap over to Fusione, which I have up. Oh no, I don't have up. I assumed I had up, but as it turns out, it logged me out. Alright, well anyway, I had made router jigs, and I was going to try to do all the tenon and Morses with router jigs. So I started doing that, and then I exploded one of the pieces because I'm an idiot. Basically, first thing I did was I took my trim router, and I plunged it. And that actually worked out okay. That actually, not that big of a deal. But, problem is that I was using a very small flush trim bit to go with my router jigs. And I needed to swap out to the larger 2-inch flush trim bit, which frankly, and this will come up in just a moment, might be a little long for a trim router. So I went ahead and I tried to get that back in, and at first I was trying to plunge it back in, kind of like I did before. I was a bit sketchy about that, and when I say plunge in, I mean angle in. So I'm not actually taking it and dropping it straight down. I'm angling it in and trying to carve out a slot for it to sit into. That was the plan. I realized that was going to be a bit sketchy, so I went ahead and I drilled a hole, which made sense. That was not a bad idea. Problem is that I then turned the stupid router on and then tried to put it into the hole while the router was on, which was so stupid of me. Like, I don't know what the heck I was thinking there. So I exploded a whoops, my phone is now listening to me. I exploded one of my router jigs for the Mortis. It was a Mortis. It was a Mortis router jig. And while I'm trying to find my login for Fusion, let's hop back over to the camera. Where's my camera at? There's the camera. And yeah, that's what happened. So that was the Mortis I was trying to cut, and as you can see, it exploded, which was not good. I mean, that was stupid on so many levels, I admit. So anyway, I decided it was time for lunch at that point. Once I blew that up, I was like, you know what? It is time for lunch. So I came home, ate lunch, did like, and then after dinner, went back to work. Sorry, give me half a second. Autodesk. I'm still trying to find my password here, and I evidently cannot focus on two things at the same time. So anyway, I came back to work, and I started working on that again. And this time I actually started with the lap joints. They were half laps is what I was putting together at work for the new base for my jigsaw table. And it's one of those things where it got a little sketchy. And I decided to hold off on that one. Basically what happened was my 3D printed router templates on that particular joint was bowing a bit because I had generic 2x3 construction material that I had trash picked, and for that reason, let me see. Oh, shoot me. That is asking for my email again instead of my password. So, the router template, because it was on uneven 2x4, and it was caged in, so I had a setup of 2x4, 2x4, 2x4 with a slot in here for the router jig to come in, or for the router rather, to come in, cut, and then I can clean up, whatever. And the piece in the middle that I was cutting was causing the router jig to basically, actually it would be more in this orientation, do this. So it was high in the middle, causing the router jig to do that, which was obviously screwing up the half lap cut. So I abandoned that. I decided, you know what, we're gonna have to do something else here. Since obviously the 3D print is not going to be stiff enough to prevent that bow if I screw it all the way down. So I'm going to have something else flat that will keep the router also flat, because as the router's riding on this, it's going up and down on this hump. So I'm going to have to figure something else out here. So and we are now in Fusion. So at that point, I abandoned that one. That was fine. That was whatever, you know? Okay, it did not work out. We can figure something out in the future and make it work in the future. Went back to doing these mortise and tenons. Let's see. Grabbed this guy. This guy is the hole for the tusk on the tusked mortise and tenon that I'm doing on the bench. And this guy, put it on one side. put it on the other side, put it in one side, cut it, no problem, easy peasy. This time I drilled the 5/8 hole in there, and then stuck the router in, and then turned the router on. So no problem there. Did it with the 1" and then the 2" flush trim bit. And when I got done the other side, and for the record, this was full size. I had not cut this down yet. So this was full size, and I had just done the through hole. As you can probably see, yeah, right there you can definitely see it. It is stepped on either side. And I looked at it, and I was like, okay, that's a bit weird. Why exactly did it do that? And I thought about it for a little bit, for about a minute, and I went, oh, you know what? Chances are these sides are not coplanar, or not coplanar, but not parallel to each other. The planes are not parallel to each other on these two sides because it is 2x4 construction lumber. Now, that is actually not that big of a deal because I was planning on, this is just a test piece, I was planning on actually squaring up the piece before I used it on the bench because I'm going to be putting MDF on top of it. So I need a flat surface all the way across to put the MDF on so that the bench top is actually flat. So that was not that big of a deal. It's like, okay, whatever. This test piece is going to look ugly. Not that big of a deal. I then grabbed a piece that looks very much like this. It's just a little bit larger. And that is for, and now that I have the Fusion up, we can go ahead and recall what the bench looks like. And where is Fusion? Fusion desktop. There we go. Hey, my face. So that is for these guys over here, the tusks. So the way I was doing this was I was cutting that little, down to a point. It doesn't necessarily need to be this deep, but I was cutting this larger cutout here so that I can put a slanted piece in here. What's the word I'm looking for? A tapered piece. So I can put a tapered insert in here in order to provide a taper for the tusk to go against. Because you need two tapered surfaces in order for it to pull itself together. That's the point. So for that reason, instead of trying to cut this taper myself, I was going to just insert a taper piece. And one of those things, when the tendon gets banged down, this will just get banged further down into the bottom here, which again is not open for that piece. So that was the game plan. Now, I say that and actually we can open that up here. Dude, come on, Fusion. Catch up. There we go. So here's all my router templates. So, as you can see, the green piece is exactly the same size as the white piece. It's just a little bit longer on this slot. And that brings us back to the desk because I have no idea what happened. I legitimately do not know what happened. All I know is that this is what I have left of that. And as you can see, if we start lining this up, this is not exactly most of this piece. Maybe it's most of. Maybe I'm being a little over dramatic. But it died. I don't know how. I do know that this piece right here in the front splintered out when it happened. That piece actually shot like a good inch out, and the only reason it did not shoot all the way out is because I had this template taped down, and I'm pretty sure that the tape held it. But something happened, and this guy just exploded. So we were done with that. But there were other things I could test. For example, actually forming this tendon with my 2-inch flush trim bit. This is my 2-inch flush trim bit. Now, I think it might have happened here, but at this point, as it turns out, I was having some trouble cutting this side, and you can see how this is a little dark. Now, before I go any further, let me say that I looked at the flush trim bit after I installed it in the router, because one of those things, look at your bits after you put them into the machine. I looked at it and I went, huh, And I turned the router on without, putting it in the wood or anything like that, and looked at it, and I was like, huh, that looks like there's a bit of run out on that. And if you look here, there is a definite slant right there. And I was cutting from this side, so slant like that. And I grabbed this. We'll see how well you can see this on the camera, but actually, maybe if I turn it this way, you'll be able to see it better. And let's see, what's the best way to square this up for you to see? I guess about that's the best I'm going to do. Anyway, point being is my 2-inch flush trim bit is bent. The shank on my 2-inch flush trim bit is actually bent sideways. I mean, it's one of those things. It's off by a little bit, but it's off by enough that you can actually see it, the run out on it, when you're running it on the thing. And as you can see on this side, it was not cutting well, and therefore, because it was not cutting well, it started burning, and it actually started melting. I cleaned this up a little bit, just one of those things, picked at it and cleaned it, but it was generating so much heat that it actually started melting the template. And you can see that right here. So anyway, I destroyed my 2-inch flush trim bit. For the record, in case you haven't seen one, it's a flat cut bit. It's got a bearing right here. I mean, this looks like, no, this is definitely not a 623. So that inner diameter, actually, is that inner diameter 6? The ID might be 6, just because this is a 1/4-inch shank. So if this is a 1/4-inch shank, then that should be about 6, 5, 6 on the ID. But that goes on here. And then you got this collar, which is turned down a little bit on the edge right there to give the bearing, the inside ring on the bearing, something right against. That goes on there and then gets locked down like that. So that's a flush trim bit. And it's a flush trim bit I no longer have because, yeah, it died. Now, that being said, you'll see that this is actually cut square on this side. I decided to go ahead, and one of those things, I had not gotten anywhere near cutting this down to correct size, right? But I decided to take my new flush cut saw that I picked up and try that out. It's a rip and cross cut, one of those Japanese dual-sided ones. And honestly, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It actually cut a lot better than I thought. So I don't know, one of those things. Maybe I end up cutting the tenon with the saw itself instead of by hand, instead of using the router. Just one of those things. Being a mechanical guy, I mean, by mechanical I mean machining guy, I kind of like the idea of doing everything just with a machine. But maybe we change. There's no way I'll be able to cut this myself, the actual hook tusk area for it, but that is what it is. So yeah, I exploded a bit, and it's one of those things. This is a 2-inch bit, so it's going to be the most expensive one. I got it in a 4-pack of 4 different sizes, but I'm curious. Let's find out. Let's see. 2-inch flush trim bit. 2-inch flush trim bit. And I just want the top. Amazon. Amazon, that's the bottom. I'm pretty sure this is a 2-inch. Here's the one that I got. Oh, I'm sorry, this is an 1.5 inches. I lied to you. I apologize. That's an 1.5 inches, not 2-inch. So let's try 1.5 inches. And while I'm looking this up, that is one of those things that I said would come up later, is back to the stick out on this thing on my trim router. May just be too much. That may be part of the problem, is that the machine is just plain not built to have this much stick out on it. So one of those things I'm willing to try again for the sake of, learning. But in order to complete this, It's one of those things I'd prefer to get this all in one cut, right? I'd prefer to get this all in one cut. And my trim router does not have very much throw on it. And I don't particularly want to move this halfway up the shank, you know? I had this, you know, choked all the way up on the shank in my router. I don't exactly want it to stick out any further than that. So. We'll have to see about getting a replacement. And the funny thing is that I am only seeing, I'm seeing like both ends, and maybe I need to type in pattern here. Trying to figure out what the cost of this is to replace it. The 4-pack itself was cheap, don't get me wrong, but I don't need a full another. Okay, here we go. Here's one. This one actually is all the way up to $13. So the 4-pack I got was like, let's see. All right, so the one I got was $17, and now I'm seeing $17 for a single one, which is, or I guess that's $14. $14 for a single one, which isn't great. I don't know. I'll do more research off stream. Don't need to be doing the research right now. So that was the deal there. Let's see. Oh, for the record, whoops. For the record, I went and bought double-sided tape because I need double-sided tape, and I was like, yeah, you know, heavy duty, may as well get the heavy duty stuff because I want the router templates not to move. And as it turns out, this heavy duty stuff is like the gel stuff. So this stuff is closer to the like blue glob stuff, the blue chewing gum type stuff that you would put on your walls to tack stuff up. This stuff is super thick. I was expecting, you know, Scotch tape basically is what I was expecting, double-sided Scotch tape. And this stuff is definitely more than I bargained for. It actually, on my scissors, now the scissors I was using at work are not particularly new or sharp, but it actually gummed up on them a couple of times, and it's one of those things, it gums up and then you try to get the scissors off it and it actually just stretches the tape because, again, the tape is basically goo. So I mean, not goo, but again, it's a squishy, rubbery kind of stuff. So anyway, it stretches with it, and then it's still stuck to your scissors, and you're trying to get it off, and it's just a mess. It ended up being a mess. So I will look for other double-sided tape that is not nearly this thick, because A, it doesn't need to be this thick, and B, it does lift the router template up by a little bit. You know, a full 1/8 of an inch is what I mean by a little bit. So that is definitely something that needs to be fixed. I think we're done with the desk for right now, so we'll come back over here to the workshop. Just looking around really quick to see if there's anything else. I feel like there was something else I'm missing here, but oh, actually there is. There is. Derp, back to the camera, and it's missing because it was literally on my desk. I'm gonna start doing these guys. These are the desklets, right? My idea was that I would be able to take these and put them into a rack and store projects on them, so they would be self-contained. And I've got the arcade stick set up on one of these guys already, so that way the arcade stick itself is self-contained, right? And it can be set into a rack. Now, where I was going to build that rack was in my desk. Since I rearranged my room in order to put the big bench in that will hold all my machines, the side table, which was holding my Prusa, is now back inside my desk. It was actually a pull-out side table for my desk. I had taken it out of my desk, which would give me room for put these guys in. But now that it's back in my desk, because that's the only place I have room for it, well, now I don't have a place for these guys. So, even though that is the case, I'm going to go ahead and finish a couple of these guys. I'm going to get a couple of these guys finished and made up, and I'll figure out what I'm doing about storing them in the future. But since I actually have myself set up now officially at work to get work done in my little shady corner of the shop, since I'm finally set up to get stuff done, I'll go ahead and finish a couple of these MDF boards and get them, ready for full-time use. Again, storing them will be a little bit of a question for the moment, but I'll figure something out. Along those lines, there was something else. What was it? Something to do with my desk. I literally just had it a second ago when I remembered these desklets. Oh, that's what it was. It's not my desk. It's my bench. That's what it was. I gotta run another line to my room is what it looks like. I'm going to see if I can steal it from somewhere else nearby. But basically, I got enough on my one outlet in my room that I'm using that I don't particularly want to throw another two machines onto it, the Carvera and potentially the Ender 3. I would like another breaker. I have a 220 volt plug in my wall over on that side of the room, which is the complete opposite side of the room. But I figured it seemed like, without even pulling it out, I kind of got the impression that it probably came from the crawl space. So I figured because it was no longer in use, I'd be able to basically commandeer it and set it up as a 120 line over on this wall over here, which is where I need it, which is where the bench is going. And I figured that'd be easy, right? Because I figured, 3-wire, 220, no problem. I went and checked it for voltage and found that my multimeter went straight to 0, which meant that it was completely grounded out on all 3 lines. Which I was like, crap. I went to the breaker box and I did not see a 220 anywhere in the breaker box. So I went, crap. And furthermore, I opened it up since, it's obviously not connected to the breaker box and it's obviously off since I programmed it. I opened it up. I checked the lines before I did any real, fiddling with it. So I took the cover off and then pulled it out slightly and got my probes back to where the lines were connected and checked it before I pulled it all the way out. And yeah, it's definitely grounded. It's definitely dead. But more importantly, when I pulled it out, as it turns out, it is not a 3-wire 220 line. It is actually a 2-wire 220 line with a ground. Like an actual 2 earth ground. So, that was interesting. So, that is not going to work. So, for power for my bench, I'm going to have to figure something else out. I know there is a closet on the other side of this wall to my right. Over that way. Completely, directly opposite. Maybe not directly opposite. I might be a little bit off. But, I actually store stuff in it. It is my closet. That I do not have my room, which makes it a little difficult, but... Point being is that I store stuff in there, so I know there's a light bulb in there, and if there's a light bulb in there, I can check it for other wiring, but I'm gonna have to see what happens. I'll be investigating that. Otherwise, I might be in a little bit of trouble with actually getting power to this bench, so that will be interesting. So. I think that's everything from me. Later on today, after lunch, we'll be doing round 2 of season 6 of Chroma Squad. We got our butts handed to us in the first episode there. Once I go live with this episode 2, I will be taking first take of season 6. I will be taking that down just because that was not a great episode, especially because it was rather frustrating to just watch me fail over and over and over again, because it was frankly, it's a hard level. It is a boss battle. So one of those things, it does not have very much value to it intrinsically, I don't think. Hopefully we'll be able to get through that today. So that is the plan for after lunch. And as for this evening, I think I'm going to work on some stuff instead of streaming a third time today. Whoops, sorry about that. So, probably no stream after dinner tonight. And I think that's everything for me. So, as always, guys, look forward to the content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at in the world. And I will catch you next time.